Okay, we are live right now, so we can go ahead and go.
This 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. What up? When I'm on the mic, suckers run.
Yeah, we are running after that. Yes, absolutely, 100%.
A little shout out to the. Let's see. When did "License to Ill" from Beastie Boys come out?
Geez, that was 80. That was like, let's see, we're 21 now.
Yeah, that was mid 80s at least, right?
Mid 80s,
84, 85, something like that. Anyway,
there's many of our generation. Well, our generation would know, but the upcoming generation, Beastie Boys, who in the heck is that?
Well, and perhaps people know who the Beastie Boys are, perhaps, but when we're talking old school, I think most of us have a tendency to default to what we're most comfortable with, and right. Old school. When I think of Beastie Boys, I think of like gotta fight for your right to party type of stuff.
Exactly.
When we listened to it when we were kids, you feel so bad because you're being rebellious and you got to fight for your right to party, and your parents would hate the fact that you're listening to this, which is probably the reason why I embraced Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction so much, because I knew Dad would hate it.
Right. Exactly. So what are we calling this podcast thing?
Violation of Expectations.
So everything we're talking about right now is literally a violation of expectations.
Violation of expectations. So what? My father expects X of me, so therefore I give him P, L, and Q.
I thought it was just an FU.
No, I never, contrary to popular belief, I actually never intentionally said FU to my parents.
Well, no, I never did either, but you thought it, right?
Oh, yeah. There was one time I was pretty angry with Mom, and I went downstairs and flipped off the floor.
That floor was hating it then, wasn't it?
But that, is that an intentional FU? No, that was, well, okay, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. That's psychologically speaking, I'm trying to downplay what it actually was, right? But
did it make you feel better is the question.
Right, but that was before I turned 18 and suddenly had this epiphany that my parents were not as dumb as I thought they were.
Right.
Okay.
Excellent. So, Daryl, give us your definition of a violation of expectations. I mean, we're going to call that the podcast, yeah, but what is the definition, literal or figurative?
So the figurative, literal, so I make reference to the smart people. When I say the smart people, I'm talking about the behaviorists, the scientists, the researchers, the people that go through and do this for a living and type up what's called empirical evidence. The smart people call it cognitive dissonance. And when we're talking about cognitive, we're talking about cognition, and which is really the thinking processes of the brain. When you put subconscious and conscious thought together, that's essentially cognition. And then dissonance is chaos is probably a good way to describe that. Dissonance is the opposite of balance or the opposite of order. So if you think about harmony, in fact, I guess if there was an opposite to dissonance, harmony would be the opposite to dissonance, right? So if you're thinking about a symphony orchestra, you're thinking about musical instruments. When you play guitar, when you play violin, when you play anything, it needs to be in tune. And not only what you play needs to be in tune, but you need to be in tune with the other people you're playing with. That's called harmony. Dissonance is essentially the exact opposite. Dissonance is that sound, that note that doesn't fit with the rest. So cognitive
when Daryl
dissonance,
used to belt it out on the microphone, that is not resonance, right?
Well, no, actually, I did get $1 thrown up on the stage once when I was belting out karaoke to Metallica, Whiskey in the Jar. And we won't mention the fact that it was in a bar and people were probably drunk at the time. And just for the record, I liked going sober to bars because it's hilarious to watch people at a bar.
Yeah.
I mean, and that comes back from law enforcement days. I spent 10 years as a police officer. Most of that was doing alcohol enforcement. So I didn't drink much, but I sure did enjoy watching people who drank. So, Metallica, right? Whiskey in the Jar. I rocked it, as evidenced by that dollar being thrown up on the stage. And if I recall, hold on, as I get into I still have that dollar.
Ooh, that's something that needs to be framed.
Well, I mean, it's in my. I got a couple different special bills, but that dollar is one of those special bills. Anyway, yet we digress. We were talking about violation of expectations and cognitive dissonance. And so a violation of expectation is Daryl going off screen to get into his drawer and not paying attention forward focused, right? Because if this is a pristine YouTube video, then you and I are doing everything we can to make this a pristine YouTube video. So the fact that you and I are just kind of winging this, okay, not kind of winging it, let's be honest. We are winging this.
The best things in the world, Daryl, are winging.
Are natural.
Okay, we talked about this off camera, but Tim's rule 101. Do
tie-dye
not
Tim.
go for perfection. Yeah, tie-dye Tim. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tie-dye. You'll see me in all sorts of different tie-dyes. Never, ever try and create something perfectly. The more perfect you try to make it, the less it's going to be received.
Which I think, again, so I think when we're talking about what this podcast, right, we're calling this violation of expectations. And your statement of, okay, now we proceed through life trying to make it as perfect as we can. And really what you're talking about is the more we try to make it perfect, the less perfect it becomes.
Exactly. And the biggest part of that is the general consuming public. Let's go from that level. This little boy now, he's a general consuming public, right? If we were to create a video and had it perfectly scripted and everything and I was looking at the camera the whole time and I was talking right into the mic perfectly and we had everything staged just right, and I said all the right things,
it would be fake. It would feel fake. It would come across as fake because as a human species, we can tell when things are real and we can tell when things are fake.
Exactly.
And I think one of the reasons why we love movies so much is you go to Hollywood and they tell a story that could be real. Meaning I'm watching this movie and I really identify with it. It's because the director and the producer and everybody has done exactly what they needed to do so that when you walk away, you're like, hey, I buy that. Right?
Exactly.
So the best movies I've ever seen, we can go all the way back to 1970, 78, when the original Alien came out with Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, geez, that was such a good movie in 78. I mean, that was pre-80s.
There's nothing like it.
No, there is nothing like it. And I was listening to something on that particular movie, and they were saying Alien, pitching the movie Alien, right, to the writers and everybody. Imagine Jaws, but in space.
But in space, right?
But in space.
And when Jaws came out, right, it played on everybody's fear of water and the big gigantic fish that's going to come destroy you. And then a monster in space plays on everybody's fears in space of we really don't know what's out there. Not to mention the fact that if you get yourself launched in space and you don't have the right type of equipment, you're dead in a matter of seconds.
Exactly.
Period, right? So there's the fears. The fears. Most of our lives, whether we will accept it or not, most of our lives is centered around either embracing or running from fear.
Let's ask the question: embracing or running away from fear? Where does this fear come from, or is the fear actually real?
Okay, so perhaps my perspective is different than some of the other perspectives. Meaning, if I fear something, it's real for me, period. And I think we end the argument. I don't think we need to talk any further about whether or not the fear is or is not real. We can talk all day long about irrational. Okay, let's throw up the air quotes. Irrational fear. Okay, and what we're talking about, Tim, is what you're afraid of is not the same thing that I'm afraid of. And why do we care? And why does that matter? Tim, you may be afraid of things that I'm not afraid of, and it's not real to me. And so all day long, I can try to convince you that what you're afraid of, for instance, my wife hates spiders.
Right.
She's fearful of spiders. She thinks the entire universe should just blow up spiders simultaneously in a gigantic ball of flames,
Right.
and then life would be better. And then I try to explain to her, without spiders, there would be all sorts of more bugs out there. But she doesn't like that because she hates spiders. And one of the worst things I ever did was send her a video of a spider on the window of her car as I drove down the street, and expecting the wind to blow that spider away. It didn't happen. So later, when that spider jumped out and attacked her when she was at home, that was
Daryl got
a moment
venom.
in time in which my wife was not the happiest with me, right?
Daryl got venom.
So if we can, so you talk about tie-dye Tim's rule number one of video casting, right? You're talking about the concept of we're not going to try to make it perfect because it feels fake.
Right, it does. Yes, 100%.
There's a lot of rule number ones, and let's say human rule number one: fear is fear. If you fear something, that's real for you. And I'm not going to spend any amount of time trying to convince you you're not afraid of that. What I'm trying to do is convince you to not embrace that fear, but face it. Recognize whether or not the fear is going to kill you dead in a matter of seconds, right? So if I fear cancer, generally speaking, cancer is years down the road, I might wear sunscreen when I'm outside. I might choose not to smoke. I might change my lifestyle in an effort to avoid cancer several years down the road.
Right.
But if I don't fear cancer, then I'm not going to change. I'm not going to do anything different, right? So what we're talking about, for example, getting personal and getting deep right out of the gate, because this is a violation of expectations. I fear that I have no value. It's something I've struggled with my entire life.
True that. I agree. We've battled with, you and I, we have battled this for some time now, haven't we?
Right. And so when we're talking about cognition, when we're talking about the smart people talking about cognition or cognition, cognitive, well, holy cow. Let's back up, because sometimes my brain and my mouth don't get to the same level, right?
So Dad calls that my brain can cash checks, my body can't.
Right. So cognitioning is the word that I was talking about, and doesn't even sound like a word, but cognitioning is really the concept. It's the construct even of thought, right? And so subconscious versus conscious, meaning conscious thought is what I recognize right now, right? Conscious thought is what I'm doing right now. Subconscious is behind the screens. Oftentimes I describe it like a computer. Your subconscious thought is like the iOS. Mm-hmm. It's the background program. It's everything in the background doing everything that needs to be done, but you don't know that it's running, right? It's the background program.
Right.
Your logic or your conscious thought is like, for instance, Zoom is a media that we're using in an effort to. So Tim is about 100 miles away from me, but yet we
literally, not figuratively, literally, yeah,
literally. So we connect via the internet. I'm at my house, Tim's at his house. We live 100 miles away. Zoom is that program that we're using right now to complete that task. So Zoom is like conscious thought, and then the iOS, the background operating system, is like the subconscious thought. And why do we care? The concept is the programming of the brain that we go through. So the law of cognition is that we learn from past experience. So our fears are based on things that we don't understand from our past, things that are confusing, things that we don't completely understand, things that we don't have trust exist. For instance, a lot of people fear the concept of God. Yes, we did go that direction. And I know that God is a four-letter word for a lot of people. But really what it comes down to is there's a point in time in which the grand argument of whether God does or does not exist will end. Meaning you either believe in God or science, and it's kind of this opposing thing, right? So either God exists or he doesn't. Either we are a construct of electrical impulses that are structured within the brain and the spinal cord and whatnot, or we are a combination of a body and spirit. And people are like, you can't prove God. And all day long, I'm like, they're full of crap. Why? Because the second somebody wakes up dead, does that not disprove all of the theories that suggest that we are a makeup of electrical signals, and the second that electricity goes out of our bodies, we are done and we cease to exist? So if anybody wakes up dead, then there is something out there. There is something more to this life. There is something. But guess what? In order to prove it, you have to wake up dead. Right. And so then you get all of these stories of life or pre, what are we talking about? The near death experiences, right? You get all of those stories about people who said, I was dead and then I saw this light and I did this, that, and another. But guess what? That's person experience. And so I've never had a near death experience. I've never seen God. I don't tangibly know, like I'm knocking on my desk, right? I don't tangibly know, but there's evidences out there that suggest that there's more to life than just this construct of accidents, which essentially is what the smart people are talking, the concept of evolution, or where humans come from. So I really prescribe to a blending of quote unquote religion and science. Something in the middle, I feel strongly is what is true. That is what evidence has brought me to believe. Now, now we started talking about cognitive dissonance. We talked about a cognitioning. We talked about learning. All of this matters because I suggested rule number one is we either run from or face fears. But there's actually a third thing that we throw in there, right? And the concept is fight, flight, or freeze. We either run from a fear because it's too much. We either embrace it because we have the courage to, or it's so overwhelming that we literally fall down in a fetal position and we freeze and we don't know what to do, right?
So part of where to explain this, we've got this slide up in a PowerPoint that I've been involved in teaching the concept of conscious to subconscious. To simplify it, fear, the aspect of fear, the absence of fear, anything that we do within our life is basically data that the subconscious has stored.
Yes.
And it recalls this information from memories and symbols. Now, here's the most important thing about the subconscious. The subconscious does not consciously choose to do whatever it's going to do with the data that we receive consciously. Its job is to store data. Now, we have an actual video, we won't play it today, where Daryl gets thrown off of a building, but yet he's not being thrown off of a building. Okay. So
I am,
why
however,
in the hell
wearing
do you behave like that?
reality headset, right? In a virtual world, and the cartoon building that I was standing on top of, knowing that my feet were in, right? I was on a third floor of a building someplace else. I wasn't on top of anything. It didn't matter. The virtual reality did a good enough job of tricking my brain into believing that it was real.
Yes, and that was all the subconscious that did that. Subconscious is what did all that work.
And I have this fear of heights. It's gotten worse over the years. It's associated with post-traumatic stress disorder. But when Tim first threw me off a building, I did in fact call him an a-hole.
Yes, he did. But he also behaved, whoa, I'm falling. Wait a second, but you're not.
But I wasn't.
Not.
But it didn't matter because I could play a zombie game in virtual reality and spend an hour in that, right? And it becomes real. It becomes my world. It becomes my reality. And when Tim turns the game off, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, this is weird.
Yeah, I'm back to, which is reality? That's the subconscious.
Back to tangible reality.
That's
right?
the subconscious. The subconscious does not know real from not real. And therefore, it will do everything and anything within its power to make real or not real, fill in the gaps and the behaviors that have to fit.
To make my perception, my perspective, my understanding real. The subconscious mind spends most of its time trying to make sense of things.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's just, we're hardwired that as a species. So you hear the word stereotype. Or you hear the word profiling. Again, I spent 10 years as a police officer, and I would use the word profile, and people would all sorts of flip out and think that I was stopping people because of their race or their gender or whatever. No, profiling all day long means that when I first started law enforcement, methamphetamine was rampant in the state of Utah. And we used to, I wouldn't say lovingly refer to people who were chronically addicted to methamphetamine as tweakers, but that's just what we said.
Even to the port that you went into one of your homes.
There was a tile. There was a tile that was engraved that said "Home, tweak home." Yeah,
lovingly endearing.
And perhaps that's a different story for a different day. But the point that I'm trying to make is as a police officer, I recognized how to recognize the evidence that a person was actually consuming, using, and or abusing methamphetamine. Right. So if you can identify the mannerisms that are associated to methamphetamine, then you can then infer that person is also doing all of those other things that associated to methamphetamine, such as theft and forgery and whatnot. And so as a police officer, I used to drive down the street profiling drug users.
Looking for the things, similarities, the behaviors, subconsciously, consciously going, we are looking for. Now I want to be aware of behaviors that are going to manifest this.
So, for example, not all smokers tweak and not all tweakers smoke. Let me go the other way. Not everybody who smokes uses methamphetamine, but everybody who uses methamphetamine smokes.
Right.
So really what it comes down to is so if you're driving down the street and then put your mind in the position of a cop, right? You're in a cop car, you're driving down the street and your job is to enforce the law and make things safe. And you do that because people drive under the influence, and methamphetamine is a horrible drug to drive under the influence of because it causes all sorts of crashes, right? So you drive down the street and you see somebody smoking. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're a tweaker. And you don't necessarily stop somebody for some arbitrary reason because they're smoking. But if you see somebody smoking who is simultaneously talking on a cell phone while driving, 90% of the time they're a tweaker. And so you stop them for that. And how dare I make that assumption? Well, I make that assumption because 10 years worth of experience tells me that particular mannerism is associated to that particular drug using lifestyle, right? And so we as humans can pick up on those things. The problem becomes apparent when I start misjudging. For instance, if I pull you over because you're smoking and talking,
okay, so let's inject. It's not, the subconscious doesn't always process data based on truth,
or the data isn't always correct, right?
Okay, so it doesn't. That's the conscious's the conscious mind, truth and facts. Subconscious doesn't process there. So therefore, if you have a belief that you talk on the phone and you smoke, simultaneously you're a tweaker. Well, whether that's based on fact or truth is irrelevant.
What's the outcome? The outcome is whether or not you got an ounce of dope underneath the console someplace, right? There's the evidence.
Right.
The outcome is really what we're talking about. So I love the way that we're winging this, because now we've gone from cognitive dissonance to how do you go out and bust tweakers? And depending, I mean, I think my life experience combined with your life experience, Tim, said that we could probably talk about anything for any length of time, and perhaps keep people entertained, right?
Okay, so let's entertain them here.
Okay.
Let's show them cognitive dissonance at play. So how old would you say this little boy is?
He appears to be 3 going on 4.
3 on 4. Okay, so the preempt on play in this, and many people may have seen this, it is actually quite funny.
It got 6.5 million views.
6.5 million views. So they've seen it. But let's talk about what we're going to potentially see here. In this little boy's mind, he believes, consciously, subconsciously, somewhere, that chocolate, Hershey's chocolate, I would
argue.
There's a wrapper.
I would argue in his mind, it's not a belief. In his mind, by damn, that is a container of chocolate candy.
Yes,
in his
because
mind.
Of the wrapper, right?
Right. He believes it so firmly that this is his truth. This is his reality. By damn, this is real.
Okay, here we go.
The child will not stop insisting on tasting this. I keep telling him it's going to be gross, but he does not want to listen. So I'm going to let him find out for himself.
Mommy's not right. Mommy doesn't know what she's talking.
Okay.
Wait a second.
Can you pause that for a second?
I can.
Tim? All right. Human emotion, right? I am not sure that there's a single person watching this that cannot infer what's going through that kid's head based solely on that look, right?
That is not good.
Like whiskey, tango, foxtrot, which is WTF, which we're not going to go into the real world. What the
hell? Yep.
What, right. Okay. So in this kid's head, right? So welcome to the wonderful world of cognition and the wonderful world of learning. When we look at somebody's face, based on what they're thinking and based on what they're feeling, it portrays in their outward appearance. Again, here comes Cop 101. I used to be exceptionally good at interrogation. When I say interrogation, I'm not talking about beating people into submission. What I'm talking about is understanding how people worked so that I could tell when they are lying. And if somebody's lying to me, they're guilty. And if they're guilty, they've committed a crime. And if they've committed a crime, it's my job to put them into jail and sometime in prison. So understanding that every outward reaction has a subconscious attachment to it is vital in understanding human behavior. This kid is immediately experiencing a violation
of expectation,
which is cognitive dissonance.
Now, here's the other variable of this conversation. This little boy is now programming his subconscious. This is not good, and I never want to do this again. Now, what he's effectively done is created a trigger. Anytime he looks at a candy bar labeled the same way as that wrapper, he is going to immediately resist or consciously going, no, I don't want that.
But if you press play, you'll see the internal argument he is having inside of his brain.
Subconscious, conscious argument. And the subconscious is what's trying to win.
This is a thing of candy. I put it in my mouth.
Okay.
This tastes horrible.
This looks like a candy
facts.
bar. Yep, checking the facts. This looks like a candy bar. Wait, but something's not right. Processing data.
This is my favorite. Right here.
Okay. That was the conscious trying to say, this is not right.
What the heck is going on?
What is going on? The facts don't match. And the subconscious is going, I don't ever want to do that again.
But see, what's going on behind this then is the human, not just tendency, we are hardwired to make our belief system real.
Yep.
We are hardwired to force our reality on what an outside or
environment.
The ancient philosophers used to call it universal truth. And universal truth is just a simple concept of what is true for you is also true for me, right? So Tim and I's universal truth is that we have the same parents, biological parents. But that is not universally true for everybody else on the planet.
No.
What we're talking about is what is universally true for every single human being. And I would argue that every single human being has emotion.
Right.
That is universally true across every gender, across every population, across. And when you say 100% of people who can be classified as humans, we all have emotion. And we're talking thousands of years in history, and we're talking 1,000 years in the future, right? Humans have emotion, period. That is universally true.
So let's watch the emotion play out.
Go spit it out. Come on, go to the sink.
Okay. So there you go.
So we go from a reality, right? A hell-bent reality, a reality concept of this is true. And I add by damn, right? In an effort to emphasize this is true. And this is true to such an extent that I am so convinced and I am so arrogant in this truth that when something disagrees with my truth, all of a sudden I have this complete and total mental breakdown. Now, this kid didn't drop in some sort of a fetal position, right? But he ate the chocolate knowing it was a candy bar. And when it tasted horrible, he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that his reality didn't match the truth.
Didn't match the truth, exactly. So, how do we, as humankind, subconscious, seems like it's there to sabotage us for the rest of our lives, right? Sabotage us. How do we get through this life then? If I'm going to just go to hell because of my subconscious programming.
But you have to understand, okay, so let's go all the way back to one of the first things you said. The more we try to make this perfect, the less imperfect it comes and the less imperfect it perceives, right? And so what we're talking about is perhaps another word for this is a dichotomy, which the smart people use that phrase to try to talk about this internal battle that goes on. I believe one thing, but I do something else. Or I perceive one thing and I do something else. Really what it talks about is learning. How else do we learn unless we can categorize if this, then that?
So you're talking about choice or opposition?
Choice versus consequence. What I'm talking about is the way that humans are programmed almost literally like computers are programmed. I say that human personality and human learning and human behavior is absolutely binary in nature, meaning as we experience life, we get written code by code, line by line, trillions and trillions and trillions of line of code of if this, then
yes.
that. Period. It's that it literally is that simple. And when we're talking about cognitive dissonance and a violation of expectation, right? Laying down if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that. This kid has eaten chocolate before. This kid has eaten enough chocolate that he knows that chocolate is sweet and it's something that he likes. But what he has never experienced is 100% pure cocoa powder. I love dark chocolate. So much so that oftentimes I only eat 70% to 80% cacao chocolate, which is far too bitter than what most people even like.
Right.
I've even eaten 90%, 95% dark chocolate. And it's so bitter at the beginning. And what I love about it is after the bitterness goes away, you actually get the true flavor of chocolate. And now we're talking about perhaps a chocolate snobbery. I don't like milk chocolate. It's too weak. It's too sweet. I like dark chocolate, right? So this kid has yet to experience what chocolate in its pure form tastes like. And is there any wonder he's so confused? Because the kid doesn't even have an understanding of how chocolate is manufactured, let alone what it looks like and tastes like in its rare.
In his reality,
form, right?
It doesn't matter. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And if the subconsciously, it doesn't matter. Consciously is where it matters. So the subconscious is basically saying, here is the label, chocolate. This is chocolate. Subconsciously, chocolate's good. I want chocolate. I'm going to eat chocolate, and I'm going to do whatever, projecting on my reality of, I want chocolate. Mommy says, no, I want chocolate. I have to make my reality real, so therefore I am going to do and behave however it's going to take. If that means throwing a fit, kicking and screaming on the floor, pestering mom and dad. Okay, we're talking about typical children behaviors.
I want chocolate.
I want chocolate. Give me chocolate.
Because now we're going down to basic fundamental motivations of pleasure over pain. Humans love things that are pleasurable, hate things that are painful. Kid likes chocolate, wants chocolate, pesters mom because here's this container, this jar of chocolate, and mom's just being a jerk because she won't give him the chocolate. And however many minutes ago, right, I said at 18 there was this epiphany that my parents were a lot smarter than what I gave them credit for, right? A lot smarter. That is the difference between this kid at a tender age of 3 and 4. He simply lacks the experience to understand what reality is, universal truth.
Well, we're not even talking about reality. We're talking about perceived reality, or what is real, what is truth, what exists.
Okay,
So
and this
again,
and maybe this is where I'm going to end. You have to understand something about Tim and I. Tim is well, okay. The two of us can be classified and defined as hard-headed.
oh yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
The two of us can be classified and defined as being loudmouth and exceptionally opinionated.
But, okay, let's put it this way: tie-dye. Okay, a lot of people don't like tie-dye, right?
Tim is loud by
I
his
am
very
loud.
nature.
I
he
am
is
noxious.
loud.
There's a movie. There's an actual documentary where there's fishes, and these fishes are on a reef, and the clownfish is talking to the other fish's parents. You know, you got a squid, you got the seahorse, and the one fish comes over and says, "I'm obnoxious." Yeah, that's me. I totally identify with that. But the tie-dye is me. So therefore, if I'm wearing tie-dye, it is a manifestation into my world, my reality, that I am loud and obnoxious. Is it a warning? Yeah, sure. It can be a warning, whatever it is. It's not the point. We have a tendency to make what goes on inside a reality in the outer world.
And my point is Tim makes a statement that the concept of I am forcing my perceived reality, and the concept is I'm suggesting, and really what Tim and I have found as we've worked together is that oftentimes we're talking about the same thing. We just describe it differently.
Semantics, as he calls it, right?
Semantics, right? But really what we're talking about is Tim is trying to emphasize the concept of the point that humans go through life trying to force their reality on reality. I'm trying to bring forward the concept that there is in fact a reality. There is in fact a universal truth, and it is my responsibility to adhere myself to that truth. Otherwise, I spend my entire life
Daryl,
fighting
I don't
against
like
it
reality.
Because
I
it
don't
doesn't
like
match
your
with what I
reality.
want.
I don't want reality.
And I'm not talking about my reality. I'm talking, again, let's go back to our, not just Tim and I's reality.
Right.
I'm talking what is true and what is real for 100% of the people who live on this planet right now. For example, every single human being has to breathe air, otherwise they die, period. That's why we don't
I'm
do
sorry,
well
I don't
underwater
identify with oxygen.
without scuba equipment, right?
I don't identify. I don't want oxygen. It's polluted.
Right. So, and the semantics of what we're talking about, and if you can really let go of your bias for a moment and try to wrap your head about what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how many people quite honestly live their entire lives trying to force their reality on everybody else.
Right. Exactly.
And then up to and including getting very angry and using extreme measures to force their reality on everyone else. And if you look in the history, we can start naming dictator after dictator after dictator, right? Now, use the term dictator and it has a negative connotation because it doesn't matter who you are. When you walk in and you start killing people who oppose you because they think differently than you do, because what you think and feel is more important than everybody else, you're just willing to kill millions of people in order to do that. One of the primary examples that I've studied is Adolf Hitler. You understand that 11.5 million people died in concentration camps alone. We're not talking about the fact that the dude started World War II. We're not talking about all of the deaths from all of the bombs and all of the bullets and everything associated to World War II. What we're talking about is concentration camps. 11.5 million people dead because of a vision and a dream of Adolf Hitler.
And their vision and dream did not match his, so therefore the reality of it is they had to go away.
He killed people that opposed him. And so thankfully, most humans don't kill people that oppose them, but we are exceptionally quick to sever vital connections when we disagree, when we can't see eye to eye. And that's actually a path that Tim and I have been on. We're brothers by blood.
Therefore, genetically, we have to fight, right? That's genetics. We have to butt heads because we're family.
Right? Except for really what it's come down to is Tim and I've said it how many times, Tim? You and I are better together than we are apart.
That doesn't mean I'm going to come and live in your bedroom or your adjoining bedroom. No.
And that doesn't mean we always agree. But what that means is your perspective complements mine and my perspective complements yours. Your talents complement me, I complement you, right?
Exactly.
Together, when we sit down and we talk about a concept, it becomes not more real, it becomes more complete. The concept. And there's been times that he and I have disagreed to the point where we've been angry with each other. But what we found is that he's speaking French and I'm speaking Portuguese or Russian
Portuguese,
or some
French.
other, right? Whatever it is, right?
Spanglish.
We're trying to describe the same thing, but we're just struggling to help each other understand what it is we're trying to communicate.
And that's part of growth. That is growth. That is a universal truth that is not, you cannot fight that. That is, that opposition is what elicits and allows us as human beings to grow.
I would add, you can fight it, but you're not going to win.
No, you're not going to win.
You can fight it all day long. You can use every ounce of energy in your physical and emotional being fighting against truth, fighting against reality. And you can
fighting
do that
against
your
learning,
entire life.
Growing. It's inherent. It's bred in us. From the minute we were brought into this world, grow and become better. Stagnation is not growing and becoming better. So therefore, what will happen is consciously and subconsciously, it is a breakdown of a system. It is a breakdown of a totality or a whole. In energetically, we are not growing and growing bigger, better. We're not expressing. We're a closed system. Now, what happens in a closed system? To a vital, big example. What happened towards the end of World War II? How did they end a war?
They dropped a gigantic bomb, two actually gigantic bombs on one of the aggressors, Japan.
Now, the atomic bomb is the epitome of a closed system.
Superior firepower.
Yes,
everybody
but it's also
gave up because they were terrified that they didn't have a weapon that matched what we had.
So the atomic bomb is the epitome or example of a closed system.
Okay.
Anytime there's enough outside pressure and everything else bombarding and there's a breach, a violation. Exactly.
I give up. Fine.
Exactly.
Have it your way, for hell's sake.
Blows up. Blows up. We've now just gave the example of why moms and dads blow up at their kids.
So now we're talking about one of the vital concepts, components, and I use the word construct because construct speaks of the mechanics of a concept or how something really works, right? So we've talked about cognitive dissonance, which is a violation of expectation, right? So now let's go back to the kid. Probably a sense of excitement, frustration because mom won't let him have the candy. And then mom gave him the candy and the frustration turned to, yes, I'm getting what I want, which then immediately turned into, again, the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. What in the bloody hell is going on right now? Okay.
The facial expressions, that was all that
emotion was he feeling? Confusion, right? Depending on the person, depending on the circumstance, fear, anger, frustration, depression, right? There's
resenting mom for allowing this to happen. Wait a second.
She tricked me. Mother is evil, as in fruits of the devil, evil, right?
Not everything's of the devil, mama.
The concept is that human emotion is attached to everything we do. And if you're taking notes, if you've made it this far into the podcast, this is the secret magic silver bullet of humanity. Period, right? Are you ready? Cognitive dissonance has emotions attached to it. If you feel bad, it's because there are violations of expectations occurring within you. And when I say feel bad, there are three primary emotions associated to cognitive dissonance: anger, anxiety, depression. When I experience a violation of expectation on a 0 to 10 scale, 0 being an absence of the emotion, 10 being the most I've ever felt it, right? 0, again, absence of anger, 10 being the most anger I have ever been. On a 0 to 10 scale, when I experience cognitive dissonance, I will either feel angry, anxious, or depressed. And sometimes I can feel all three, depending on how bad it is. And if we're only talking 1, 2, or 3 on that 10 scale, right, we're still feeling an increase of that emotion. So what I'm talking about is the concept of people walking through life, anxiety, depression, and anger free, are people who have the ability to resolve the conflict.
So we're going to go in and explain what he said just a little bit differently. Again, it's that contrast. It's that Daryl is a nice, good color. I've got a light over there. If I change lights here, you know,
I got lights
contrast
to the right and left,
okay?
right? Okay.
It's contrast. So what we're going to talk about is anxiety, anger, depression. These are all anomalies or something is triggering a subconscious programming belief. Just like the boy with the chocolate. Somewhere in there, something in our life, an anomaly is setting in and violating or challenging a closed system or behavior that we have instilled somewhere in our life. Whether it be a self-view, whether it be a worldview, whatever it is, there's a programming. Okay, this situation comes in, violates my closed system self. I don't want to believe that because that cannot be true. And then all of a sudden,
refuse to believe that because it can't be true.
Resistance. Now, eventually, we're going to get to that point where there's so much pressure that we have to explode. Some people will turn to addictive substances. Yes. Alcohol, drugs, well,
domestic violence.
Domestic violence. How about a Coca-Cola, Daryl? Is that an addictive substance?
Well, you know,
okay.
Yes, caffeine is not as addictive as
cigarettes,
methamphetamine.
Whatever it is.
But it's still, yeah. 100%.
It's still a violation. So therefore, I need to figure out a way to make this feel better and go away. I'm not willing to change what I believe or feel. And therefore, and then all of a sudden we just melt down and we end up into drug rehab at a court order.
This is chocolate, but it tastes nasty. What the hell is going on?
And the A-bomb goes off. Yes. This is all coming from a subconscious programming level. Again, consciously, we, as an individual, group of individuals, we have to make the conscious decision, do I want that, or do I want the opposite?
So the reality is that he's eating 100% pure cocoa powder, and it tastes nasty. And mom's like, spit it out. Spit it out. Get it out of your mouth so it doesn't taste bad anymore.
No, it's chocolate.
But it's chocolate. But it's chocolate. No, Mom, spit it out. Spit it out. But it's chocolate.
No, but
right?
It's chocolate.
Finally, the displeasure, the distaste, right? Finally, the pain of the horrible flavor
I'll go
was
spit it
enough
out
for him to spit the chocolate out and to override his programming. Right? So welcome to life. Tim talks about closed systems, right? A circular closed system. That's a heart. What we're talking about is the way that life is created. And again, I don't care if you believe in God. I don't care if you believe in science. I don't care if you believe something in the middle. What we're talking about is the reality. If you and I both wake up dead, then we can high five each other and say God is real, right? If you and I don't wake up dead and we just flash out of existence, then it's whatever. There is no high five, no harm, no foul. But what we're talking about is a concept of what kind of a life do I want to live? What kind of an emotion do I want to experience?
Do I want joy and happiness? Or do I want to live my life in misery?
Do I want to feel? And far too many people refuse to accept that I have control over emotion, that emotion is a choice. I've just pissed a lot of people off. You can't tell me that emotion is a choice. Because I have zero control over my emotion. All right. Okay. Let me back up. I don't want to offend, but I do come forward, and perhaps now is the time to discuss my credentials, not the fact that I've spent the last 20 years studying and learning about human behavior, right?
Studying doesn't mean anything. You
doesn't
don't
matter.
know anything, Daryl. 20 years of study.
Got a master's level education, right? I mean, Tim and I are almost polar opposites. Tim's got a
your master level
in
doesn't make you any cuter. I'm sorry. You're still ugly.
Actually, my wife thinks I'm exceptionally attractive and that I'm aging very, very well.
Ooh, see, there's the truth of it.
So Tim's kind of polar opposite. I embrace the academics. I went to school. I got an education. I study it. I read research. Purposely enjoy reading research because I love answering questions. Tim's got a high school education, but he didn't really do college. And there's reasons for that. But what Tim has is a PhD in life, a PhD in hard knocks.
Part of that comes down to
right.
Being raised, I suffered from a thing called dyslexia or dyslexia. Reading the books that Daryl does, my brain goes into left field and just kind of goes, oh, okay.
But on his own, Tim has figured
You're not going to get that data.
How to understand the same concepts that I can understand from reading the empirical research. Basically, things that are written by PhD level therapists and scientists and right. I mean, these really smart people that use really, really big words. And I just get used to shutting down my own ego. And when I'm reading something and I see a word that I don't understand, guess what? I double click it, right click it, define it, and then move forward, which is the reason why I love it this day and age. And
that is where Daryl and I both are on the same page. However, right. Okay, that's a definition, but what does that mean to me? What does that mean to everything else? Just to have something defined, that's fine, but how do I use that information?
Okay, so let's back up a little bit and perhaps maybe try to put a band-aid on some of the hurt feelings that maybe that I've caused and you've caused in this conversation. Here is where I will put all of the eggs in my basket, per se. This is where I will bank. I'm not going to bank so much on the 20 years of experience in the education and whatnot, right? I'm going to bank on my own personal experience and my own personal experiences, emotions. I was diagnosed in 2011 with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I promise you, at that point in time, I had zero control over emotion. Zero control. Emotion controlled me.
Well, yes, but you made a conscious decision somewhere that that's not what you wanted. So
I did.
But wait,
that is
you
the
told
first
me
step
you didn't
forward.
have control, but yet no. See, and this is where my brain goes, no, you did have control because you made a choice that you didn't want it.
I did, but it took years before I could make the choice on how I felt. So the initial choice, right, is I don't like the way I feel. There has to be something different to do, right? There was that exploration. There was that choice that led to a journey that brought all of these concepts into an understanding. A journey.
So the emotion was controlling you. However, the conscious choice said, consciously, subconscious, I don't want this anymore, and I am going to look for something that's going to fix or make me feel better without going to the drugs, the alcohol, blowing my brains out, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I never went to drugs. I never went to alcohol, but I did go to the very real, you know what, life sucks so bad and emotion sucks so bad, and their pit is so deep. Yeah, 100%. Suicidal, 100%. That was me. I made the choice to die. Didn't want to die. Absolutely didn't want to die, but I could see no end to the pain. It was that bad. And because there was no end to the pain, I could not see any other option. And notice I say I could not see any other option. It's not that other options didn't exist. In the space where I was, I could not see.
Did not have the information, conscious information, to be able to make a conscious decision of something being different. This was the subconscious telling me the story, the narrative.
So crisis level emotion, 10 out of 10 anxiety, 10 out of 10 depression, 10 out of 10 anger. I had no control over my life. None whatsoever, except for the choices that I made in order to begin exercising control.
Which was what? Turning to others, family, friends, others, conscious level. I need to go to others to help me do what I am unable to do myself.
So the choice was to do something different. The choice was to begin thinking differently. And yeah, I went to therapists. I sought out therapists. I've been to therapy for years. I've studied and I've learned and I've grown and I've done everything I can up to including taking medication in an effort to help control this emotion. But if I had no control over it, if it was impossible to change the way that I felt, then the last 10 years of my life would have been an absolute waste of time. But it's not. Because I went from 10 out of 10 crisis level emotion. I can see no other option other than to blow my head off. Literally, I was walking up the stairs to grab my pistol to end my life when I got a telephone call from the uncle of my ex-wife who simply said, Daryl, I felt like I needed to talk to you. And I said, you're damn straight. And he literally saved my life because it broke the mindset. And it helped me feel like there was somebody on this planet who valued who I was.
He became an anomaly to the closed system of this is where I'm at and now challenge. And he became an open system by saying, yes.
So now what we're talking about is these challenges, right? A violation of expectations more times than not leads to negative, adverse, what we call a maladaptive emotion. But guess what? This whole nature, this whole life is challenge. We don't grow unless we experience these sometimes horrific challenges to belief so that we can adjust our belief. And it comes down to a concept of core belief being at its very center. For instance, core belief is I have value. I am lovable. I can versus I can't, right? Core belief. Too many people, I've worked with high risk populations for 20 years, right? Too many people spend too much time saying I can't. Most of the time.
That is a core subconscious programming.
Most of the time,
somewhere in your life, you've told yourself to believe that.
Most of the time it's a fear, and it's less I can't, it's more I won't, because I'm too afraid to try something different. So really, I mean, if we're going to wrap this thing up, I mean, if we're going to go a direction and say that perhaps, you know, we've gone 1,000 different places, but this single podcast is not meant to describe everything in one sitting, right? If we're going to wrap this up, we're going to talk about the concept of the journey. We're going to talk about the concept of life, or the construct of how we learn control over ourselves and how we help other people learn control over themselves, right? So it starts intrinsically with me, and then it naturally branches extrinsically to other people. What we're talking about is a concept of learning how to embrace reality, learning how to embrace the truth. And we're not talking about God. We're not talking about science. What we're talking about is tangible, raw reality. And the first challenge that I'm going to issue to anybody is you don't have to feel the way you are right now.
There's a choice.
There's a choice.
You make the first step. There is only one step. Consciously choose the opposite of how you're feeling now.
It is that simple. And people are going to fight against that. Mm-hmm. It's chocolate. No, it's 100% cocoa powder. It tastes horrible. Spit it out. Do something different. Think different. You have to believe something is possible before you can create that reality. And what we're talking about is the reality, the universal truth that all humans have emotions. And the universal truth is that there's a choice attached to every emotion. What I need to do is I need to understand the reality of the dissonance. I need to understand the conflict. I need to understand the violation. And I need to adjust my perception. I need to adjust my belief. I need to adjust my position to meet reality. If I don't like what I
need to change.
Yes.
I need to change.
But too many people spend too much time forcing other people to accept their reality. Too many people spend their entire lives trying to force the outside world to meet and match their reality.
And look,
Stop it. For hell's sake, stop it.
We're not doing that today. We're not going there today. That's other discussions, because Daryl and I have both got stories. We know stories. We can go there, just not today.
And I've got another brother ringing the doorbell because he's going to come over and do some work in my backyard. So quite honestly, this is something we got to wrap up because Tim and I sneak this into our normal lives. We're out doing other things.
If you
but there's
call
a
this
passion,
life normal.
Right. we each share a passion. And that passion is trying to help people understand what we know is true. And in that context and that concept, right, this podcast is entitled Violation of Expectations. We embrace that. We embrace the challenge of doing and thinking differently, because that is where growth comes. And that is where my happiness, my joy, that is where I can sit in this chair right now saying I feel zero depression, zero anger, and 1 out of 10 anxiety. And the anxiety comes from the fact that I know I'm keeping my other brother waiting.
There you go. Excellent. Peace out. We're planning on weekly.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks.